Do you think I'm doing the right thing by platforming Tapper and Thompson on their book?
Absolutely. What are we even doing?
You know how you love that term.
It's thankfully it's 2025 and people have kind of quietly dropped that for the most part as a stupid criticism. Now you have like the New York Times and Ezra Klein like, maybe we should talk to Steve Bannon after all. So yeah, you're doing the right thing and give him hell. And we, I would say, speaking for the three of us, we like and know Alex Thompson especially, but also Jake Tapper. And it should be a thoroughgoing exchange of ideas.
Yes, I think it will be. And no one's under any pretenses that it's going to be anything else, right? It's like what I say about Jake and Alex and them writing this book, it goes out of this microphone. It's not like I'm just whispering it in Doug's ear. I've been pretty open about my thoughts on the media cover-up of Joe Biden's problems. So we'll do all that. But I will say, if you're looking for it to be done through a hateful lens where I just emerge with these two left in a puddle of blood, that's not going to happen. I mean, I will be respectful to them as I am to anybody who does me the courtesy of swinging by the podcast. It's going to be contentious, but it's going to be robust and meaningful and honest and unsparing, but hopefully cordial in a way that makes them feel respected and glad they came, but makes the audience also glad they came by. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you can also say that people were, shall we say, very, very slow on this story that over at the Fifth Column we figured out in 2021. Maybe 2020.
Before that.
Maybe this guy's a little too old to be president. But I'll give our friend Alex Thompson some credit, because when he was doing it, regardless of the speech at the Correspondents' Dinner, which I didn't listen to the whole thing, so I can't really comment on, but he was telling us off the record then, and I think on the record now, that he was like being attacked pretty brutally by people within the administration for the reporting that he was doing starting in, I think, 2023 about the
See, I'm interested in hearing
decline.
that. I am interested in
hearing him. So he's got a lot of
that.
stories about that. Yeah. Yeah, they went after
That's
him
the thing.
pretty
And
hard.
I also do want to hear the stories. Like, as much as we're all like, oh my God, how is Jake Tapper writing a book about, that I do want to hear what Jake Tapper found, because I think he's probably got sources a lot closer to Joe Biden than I do. So it's almost like you need these media figures to do this to some extent, because not that we didn't know, but aren't you interested in the details of how bad it was? I am. I'm reading all these excerpts, not just from this book, but from all the four, voraciously. I'm like, I just feel so validated. I'm sure you guys feel it too. It's like, we knew, right? And then now you get the specifics of how right you were.
Yeah, and I haven't read the book yet, so I feel a little bit at a disadvantage trying to comment on it, but I do plan to. And as the guys have mentioned, we've talked to Alex about this a number of times during the period when he was getting a lot of criticism from outside. I mean, it's hard to understate the consequences of groupthink and its ability to make you not see things that you don't want to see anyways. So that is almost certainly a huge part of what happened in DC. But from the excerpts that we read already, the coordinated effort on the part of the Biden administration to try and obscure the fact that the president was in fading health and just kind of waning in terms of his actual capacities towards the end, but really throughout his administration, is one, again, not surprising to us, but is really revealing to kind of read out in the open like that. The disagreements between George Clooney and others, the kind of exercise of going through writing that letter, the fact that people were privately saying one thing about Joe Biden and what they knew was wrong, and publicly saying quite another thing. It's not just politics as usual, or perhaps it is, but that should make one very cynical and deeply concerned. I think there's been a lot of kind of suggestion that the blame here is with the party who lied, or with the administration who lied, but as we've all pointed out already, a lot of the blame is with the mainstream media, who just did not do their jobs for whatever reasons. And those reasons are often complicated and can't simply be boiled down to, I don't think, contempt for Republicans or conservatives more broadly. It's a little bit more complicated than that, I think.
So this is what the value I think the book's bringing, this book and the others. None of us is going to soften on the media. I mean, I think that's the reality. Like, we know, anybody who's an independent journalist or right of center knows exactly what the media did with this story. Mm-hmm. We know. But I personally would like to see some sort of congressional investigation, like an actual commission looking into who was president, how bad was it, who covered up, who lied, about the mental fitness of the sitting commander-in-chief who had access to the nuclear codes. We need like a serious, maybe even bipartisan commission to actually get to the bottom of this. And so big books by Democrats and their media enablers are helpful in that particular regard. Like the left does need to be aware that I know they were willing participants in the lie, but they need to be aware of just how bad it was. And this needs to be shoved down their throats so that they can't just be like, oh, it's backward looking, which is what they're saying now. Fuck you and you're backward looking. We had a sitting president who was a vegetable. We need an investigation. No, it's not. You can't just dismiss it and pretend like it didn't happen by saying backward looking. It's here right now. And I realize it's brand damaging for the Democrats. I don't care. If it has to be just a singular party investigation, then so be it. But we do need to get to the bottom of it. I want to, in line with what you just said, Kmele, here's Jake Tapper speaking, the book. They published an excerpt in the New Yorker, and the advanced copy was obtained by The Guardian, and Axios has a piece of it. That's where Alex Thompson's from. And so the news reports are already hitting. So Jake gave an interview on his own network, CNN, speaking to the lies, that was his word, yesterday. Sat one.
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024. And we spoke with more than 200 people, almost all of whom were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
Is anyone shocked?
I mean, and let's keep in mind also that a lot of the quotes, at least that we've seen in the New Yorker piece, are still anonymous. Which is like campaign operatives said, and high-profile Democrats said, we're not going to get anywhere close to fixing the ills and the rot that allowed this to happen without some actual accountability and honesty. I think there's an interesting comp of a book that's out now. Megyn, you interviewed David Zweig, as did we at the Fifth Column, about his book, An Abundance of Caution, which looks back at why did we basically close schools when the rest of the world had figured out that we shouldn't during COVID. Boiling it down very quickly. But the media was very complicit in that. The elites were very complicit in that. And part of his approach and understanding is like, hey, look, this can happen again in a different way. We need an autopsy of this so we can figure this out. Historians are going to be looking at this for a long time, just as they did with FDR's 1944 election when he was dying of congestive heart failure, with Woodrow Wilson having a stroke in the White House. We had Dr. Jill Biden chairing cabinet meetings. And then
right.
the few that Biden was chairing, they put the names so that he could see them. Like, what are we talking about here? But we need to know exactly the habits of mind that allowed that kind of delusion. I'm reading the New Yorker story, and I want to throw a brick through my own window. It's making me so infuriated, because what is happening here? This is less than 12 months ago. Right? Her report is already out in February, saying that he's an old man and he's feeble. The Wall Street Journal is doing good reporting, one of the only outlets out there doing good reporting, and they are getting absolutely slammed by the Joe Scarboroughs of the world and a lot of other people besides on cable news and elsewhere as like, oh, well, it's Murdoch owned and they're bad and we can't be trusted. That we were literally talking 12 months ago about cheap fakes. People who were in the audience when Joe Biden had no idea where he was, where Barack Obama is like guiding him off. Oh, okay, this way. And when Fox News and other right of center organizations were pointing out like, wow, that looks bad, they're like, oh, that's selectively edited cheap fakes. It is those habits of mind among journalists, let alone Democrats, that we need to sort of
Let me show one.
And
let me show one. Here's Brian Stelter. June 19th, 2024. We are 5 days before the debate, which I believe was June 24th, if memory serves. But we are within days of the fall down debate. And here's Brian Stelter trying to dismiss all these terrible videos of Biden with his aggressively deteriorating decline. SOT 15.
We've been worried for years about AI deepfakes, that computer-generated images are going to trick people into believing something that's totally false. Cheap fakes are a little bit simpler. They're cheap. They're just distorted, out-of-context videos, chopped up in certain ways. That's what the Biden administration, the Biden campaign is so worried about right now. But make no mistake, they are worried about this. This is a real problem. This is not some made-up fiction. The videos are oftentimes made up, but the problem is real.
Oh, my God.
No, it's a made-up problem. That is, in fact, a made-up problem, Brian.
He said that.
I'm sorry to point that out to you. Yeah.
It's amazing he said that. Like, they actually were spinning. The debate was the 27th on CNN and elsewhere, not just there, MS, of course, that really the problem here is not at all Joe Biden. It's these terrible right-wing cheap fakes that are manufactured and not believable fake videos of the alleged decline. It's incredible. This is not long after that Clooney fundraiser, which is detailed in this new book. And it's horrifying. I mean, again, we knew that, but more details about just how horrifying it was. And let me just give you a couple, and then I'll give it back to you, Moynihan. Highlights. Biden did not recognize George Clooney at this June 15th fundraiser. And to me, it's so funny because this is, of course, what led George Clooney to be like, oh, my God, he's really too far gone. He doesn't know me. Everyone knows me. But, I mean, in his defense, he is world recognizable. Biden hobbled out from around the corner. Clooney knew the president had just arrived from the G7 Leader Summit in Italy and might be a little tired, but holy shit, he wasn't expecting this. I'm quoting here. The president appeared severely diminished, as if he'd aged a decade since Clooney last saw him in December 2022. He was taking tiny steps, and aides seemed to be guiding him by the arm. It was like watching someone who was not alive, recalled a Hollywood VIP. It was startling. We all looked at each other. It was so awful. Thank you for being here, the president said to guests as he shuffled past them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Clooney felt a knot form in his stomach as the president approached him. Biden looked at him. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. You know, George, the assisting aide told the president, gently reminding him who was in front of him. Yeah, the president said to one of the most recognizable men in the world, the host of this lucrative fundraiser. Thank you for being here. Hi, Mr. President, Clooney said. How are ya? The president replied. How was your trip? Clooney asked. Fine, the president said. It seemed clear that the president had not recognized George Clooney. It was not okay, recalled the Hollywood VIP who had witnessed the moment. That thing, the moment where you recognize someone you know, especially a famous person who's doing a fucking fundraiser for you. It was delayed. It was uncomfortable. George Clooney, the aide clarified for President Biden. Oh, yeah, Biden said. Hi, George. Clooney was shaken to his core. By the way, he would not come out with his story until after that debate, until after it was clear Joe Biden was imploding and wouldn't step aside. He's a fucking coward. Sorry, a lot of F-bombs. My apologies. The president hadn't recognized him, a man he had known for years. And then they go on to say other June 15th LA fundraiser attendees were also concerned. They described Biden as slow and almost catatonic. There were obvious brain freezes and clear signs of a mental slide. It was, to some of them, quote, terrifying. Obama, who was there, decided that the fault lay with Biden's busy schedule. But Obama would come to realize that scheduling was not the fundamental problem. This July, speaking of resets, there's a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio. This bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of dollars in your savings. While this transition will not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.